It's that time again.
Ooh, and Halloween is over.
It is over.
Man. When are we moving on to Thanksgiving and Christmas?
It was cold last night, wasn't it?
It's fucking colder than shit.
Damn good thing I didn't go trick-or-treating.
I know it, man. It's did your kids go out?
They did. So they're finally at that age. So Liam had 3 of his friends come over, and then Isabella went to a friend's house, and they did their trick-or-treat crap, and it was great because I didn't have to go out and freeze. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I had a couple of, when we first came back from Vegas and we were up in Kansas City, we had a couple good, like the very first one. So we were trying to adjust anyway, but then the first Halloween that we had, you needed gloves. It was that cold.
Wow.
And like, yeah, the kid, it was so cold. It was like, I don't know what the temperature was, but it was freezing cold. Like,
are you talking about here?
Bad. What's that?
Here in,
yeah, well, in Missouri. I was in Kansas City at the time.
Oh, okay.
But
got it.
It was just a major show. Well, the first 2 weeks I was back, we got 12 inches of snow up there, and I didn't have a shovel. I didn't even have a coat.
12 inches?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just checking.
Not that 12 inches, yeah. 12 inches of snow. I had to go borrow a shovel from my neighbors, and they were laughing. I had to explain, I'm not from here. You know,
right.
moved. So didn't expect this the first 2 weeks. But, yeah, it's been cold, and it's cold right now.
Yeah, for sure.
It takes a while to adjust.
Yeah, you know, and when it comes on so quick, there's no adjustment time. And, excuse me, sorry, I got something in my throat. And then again, this weekend, it's going to be warm again.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be like high 68.
Wow.
So that's a drastic.
I didn't even look. It feels like 35 for sure, but.
Right now, I guarantee it is.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, I was inside watching horror movies on TV, so.
I was watching scary videos on YouTube.
Well, I watched a scary video. I watched a scary video about some frickin' yo-yos in a frickin' insane asylum.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? Do tell. What about it?
Well, I got a video sent to me from some guy, and it was a video of him and his dog, and I think it's called the Edinburgh Manor, showing me creepy freaking ghost footage.
Yeah.
And that guy would be you. Let's talk about that. So you did
I had a very interesting weekend, man.
Now, that was just Saturday night? You went up there for just that night?
No, we stayed Saturday and Sunday. Came home Monday morning-ish. But anyway, I went up there with DNM Paranormal, my buddy Dane. You know, I don't think you've met him, but you know of him.
I know of him, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I started I guess it's about 3-4 years ago now, a documentary on paranormal investigators. And since I knew Dave from high school and he started this group, who better to pick? You know what I mean? So I've been following them around, and there's a couple spots that we've gone to, and I haven't had not a damn thing happen, right? Which I'm coming at it from the skeptical, the skeptic angle. I don't really believe. I kind of want to believe, but I don't believe. Well, we had some crap happen this weekend that I can't explain, and really kind of puts me more towards the believing vice the non-believing. And what happened is we were in this basement. Well, first of all, Edinburgh Manor was this, it's an old poor farm that converted into an insane asylum, basically. And it opened its doors around the 1840s in a town called Monticello, Iowa. And if you're not familiar with what a poor farm is, it's what it sounds like. It's where people that didn't have the money to take care of their family members or whatever, or homeless people or vagrants, they'd get dropped off at this poor farm. And they would live there, but they had to work the farm. It's kind of like indentured servitude, really.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't go off to say it's slavery, but indentured servitude for sure. So anyway, the folks that were there were mistreated. There was a lot of mental health illness within the population that lived there. So invariably, a lot of people died, and it's had doors open until 2010, which is when they closed.
Oh, no shit. Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of people in and out through that place, and they have at least about 250 documented deaths, and that's just what they know of. They're sure that there was more. So they have actually, somebody went through and did all the research, and on site there they have a copy of the death certificates of everyone that was in there, or the majority of folks. And, of course, being in the medical field, I was fascinated to go through and look at the causes of death. And most
electroshock
of
therapy,
most of it was cardiac related. So, and it makes a lot of sense because they would range from age from kids all the way up to elderly adults. So, a lot of cardiac related issues. There was a couple cancers, some accidents, couple suicides. So just there's a wicked feel to that place, man. Just from the jump, right? It looks creepy. You walk in, it feels creepy. So we were in the basement, and they had all their equipment out. They've got these things called REM pods that I guess it's supposed to sense a shift in the electromagnetic field, so it'll make a noise and light up if that field is interrupted. They have things called spirit boxes. Basically, I still don't believe in any of that equipment.
Is that like the Ghostbuster box? Like
yeah.
Plasma box? Metal.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I don't put any faith in that equipment. I don't believe that it really works the way it's supposed to or the way it's claimed to. But I had Alma with me, and we're in the basement, and it's pitch black. I did have my night vision monocle with me, so I could hear her. She would get up. She was laying down. She would get up, and she would look off to the right and up towards the ceiling. And I had to, my night vision, I'm looking, I don't see anything, but she's tracking it. Her head's moving like she's watching something move, You know how she is. She's normally a super chill dog, but yeah, she's, when she, alerts to shit, she's focused like a motherfucker. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I'm sorry, man. I've got something in my throat. Anyway, we're sitting there, and she's doing this throughout the whole time we're there. Well, she gets up and she like stands up right in front of me, like she's protecting me, like she's putting herself between me and whatever it is she's looking at. And then I hear a growl, and it wasn't her. And I look over at the guy I was with, and he looks at me, and he even asks, he says, "Was that your dog?" I'm like, I don't think so, man.
That's the video that I got, and he seems almost surprised. Like, he's like, well, I was kind of half sold on this, but now I'm worried.
Right.
He kind of looks at you for reassurance, like,
right.
Oh, that was your dog.
Right. Yeah. So, we both heard it. You obviously heard it on the video.
Yeah, I can hear it because you said in the text you sent me, you said, put on your headphones. And I thought, oh, shit, I'm going to have to really decipher this. And I'm either going to have to it's going to be a sway decision. Like, that's could have been anything. But then you didn't need the headphones. Like, that's what we were talking about before we started was I played it later on for the family. And I said, he says put headphones on. And I'd listened to it the first time, but I don't think you need headphones. And you could hear it. And did you see my text back to you on that? What I said? It doesn't matter. Go finish your part, and then I'll tell you what I thought.
No, so So that happened down there. I don't know, man. I don't know. Now meanwhile, there's nobody. There's total of 7 of us, right? Nobody else on the property. They gave us the keys, and paid our money, gave us the keys, and they said, "See you later." So I don't know what the hell it was, man.
Could they have? Now that's one of the things I thought. So the two things. When the guy looks at you and he says, "Was that your dog?" Her ears are kind of. She's kind of looking around, and then all of a sudden they would perk up. But Alma doesn't really. I mean, I've seen her get uptight a few times with like with my dogs. Like she'll get, like she's got, but she's not a real vocal kind of dog like that. So,
No.
but the two things that entered my mind was, let's say that it wasn't, which is weird.
Mhm.
I mean, something made a noise or a growl or whatever the hell it was. But let's say that even if it was her, then that was even weird too, because that means that she was freaked out by something.
Right.
But from what I could tell, and this was the best part about it, was I've watched some of their video stuff before, and I don't, I wonder if they believe it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've talked about this with other people before. Like, sometimes it just makes for a good hobby, or maybe it makes for a good. But at that moment, it looked like it was kind of like, you know what I mean? It was like they were shocked. They were like, "Holy shit!"
No, I will say that the guy that looked at me, that's the first time I've ever met him.
Oh, okay. So he's new to it then.
Well, he investigated with DNM. They belong to another society, associate, whatever. But I guess they came with us this trip, because it's a cool opportunity. They're really cool people, man. I enjoyed their company a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but yeah, that was the first time I ever met them.
You're like, I don't think so.
I was so shocked by it, and now looking back, I know it wasn't her. I had my hand on her. I was petting her. I would have felt her. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't. It came off from my right. She's right here in front of me, and it came off from my right. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Like it came from so there's like the door area. It sounded like it came from that. Well, she was looking in a certain direction, and then her ears kind of perk up, and then you hear the noise, and if you look, it kind of sounds like it's to the right of the camera, which would have been on that. And because you even shine the flashlight, you pick the flashlight up and shine it in that direction. So yeah,
it's crazy, man. I can't explain it.
Over at me, you might have an empty chair.
So again, man, we've talked about this before, but I don't know what to think of that, man. And then we went up into what they call the kids' room. Now, here's what's fucked up about that place, man. When they closed it in 2010, from what I can understand, they were basically shut down, and they moved all the patients in the middle of the night. They didn't tell them they were moving. So if they had family that could move their stuff for them, they moved it. If not, it stayed there. There's clothes, there's personal items from the original residents that are still in there, man. It's in that place, which makes it really creepy. Does it mean it's haunted? No, it doesn't mean it's haunted, but it's creepy nonetheless. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure, dude. Yeah.
So we're in the kids' room, the quote unquote kids' room, and they had the what do you call them, the REM pods on the floor, and they had this device. It's like VR goggles, right? You put it on, and somebody else asks a question, and an image will manifest. It's an app. Again, I don't believe that shit either. But it was cool. I used it, So I had it on, and she's laying down. I can't see anything, but it's like, remember the old TV static back in the day before cable?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's like until an image comes across. So
okay. So like if they did, so you didn't see an image then, because
No, I saw a lot of images.
Like what?
So it like I said, it's an app and it saves the images so you can look at it on the phone and show other people later.
Okay.
It's an app. So I don't believe for a second it's really, a ghost. I think it's pre-programmed shit that comes randomly on.
Yeah.
And then you look into it, whatever way you want to look into it. Oh man, I can make that fit the objective.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is silly. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Anyway, I had them on because I thought it was cool. I wanted to try it. Almost laying at my feet. They're telling me that she's getting up, and there's video too to support. She's getting up and she focuses on the REM pod that's on the floor. She starts, tracking again, and as soon as she starts doing it, that thing starts going off. And she was tracking a bunch of different shit in that room, and at another point, again, she got up, and this time she leaned into me. She was shaking. You know how like she gets with the lightning?
Right.
That's what she was doing, man. She was fucking shaking.
And there was no other there was nothing. There's no storm, so there's no fireworks and shit like that, right? So
there was nothing there, man. Just out of the blue, she starts shaking. She gets up, she's tracking, starts shaking, and puts herself in between me.
She's like, "What? I would have been. Get me out of here. What are you doing to me? Let's go."
She was worn out, man. And there was one point where I took her out to go potty, and I had a hell of a time getting her back in. She didn't want to go back in the building.
Huh. So, what's your takeaway then? What do you think? Are you leaning more towards there's ghosts, or do you think that
I'm leaning more towards something happened there that I can't explain?
No, why couldn't those people maybe they have like some sort of SUV or something they could take back there? Maybe they got some bicycles hidden way up over behind some trees. They leave, you see them leave, they go get on their whatever, walk back. Maybe they have a hidden underground freaking hatch they sit in, and they come in and they, whatever the hell we heard. Why couldn't they do that? They get paid money, right? If they get more traction.
Yeah. Sure. But I think she would know somebody was there. And then we start shining the lights. Oh, hey, found you, motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing there.
Right, yeah. Because like my dogs, they hear shit that I can't even believe they can hear.
Right.
Yeah.
And the sense of smell alone, they'd go right up to the person.
Okay.
But and secondly, now of course they could have another set of keys, but we lock the doors. So
how many doors are there though? Wouldn't that be?
There are 3. There's a back door, a front door, and then there's a door kind of towards the basement, like by the loading dock area. It's an old ass building, man.
Is it big?
It's pretty big, yeah. Yeah. And it's creepy. God, is it creepy.
Well, yeah, dude, you're sitting out there at fucking night. It helps. How many people were there?
7.
Total. Yeah, that's going to help. But if you're there with 2 other guys, it's going to be a little bit different.
So 7 of us total. 4 of them left Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
So that left 3 of us by ourselves Sunday night.
So you stayed Sunday night too and did it again.
Yeah. Although I have to admit, 9:00 rolled around Sunday night, and I'm like, ghost be damn, I'm going to bed.
Right.
I was smoked, man.
Fuck it. Leave a camera up.
Yep.
We'll look at it tomorrow on your app.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, dude, I don't know, man. Both instances I got on camera.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here trying to convince you.
No, I know. I seen it, and it's definitely something. It's definitely a noise for sure. The question is like I said, is it Alma or is it not? But either way, it's still weird.
I can tell you with 100% certainty it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I know in the video I said I don't think so, but I'm still kind of shocked at
that's what it sounded
what
like.
I heard.
It sounded like you were like, it's almost like you were being accused. You were like, I don't think I like. Your brain hadn't had a chance to fucking filter what had just happened. Like, like you weren't even thinking about that.
No.
Now that I had time, you would have been like, no, that wasn't.
But I know 100,000% it wasn't her.
Like the guy that asked you, was that your dog? Shit his pants at that. I think he shit his pants, and then he said, "Was that your dog?"
Right.
And he said, "I don't think so." And then he shit his pants again.
Because he's probably wondering, was he the only one that heard it? And then when we looked at each other, he realized, oh fuck, he heard it too.
Yeah. Yeah, the way you said it, dude, it was like a little kid. You're like, I don't think so. Like,
yeah. I was kind of in a state of shock almost. Like, did that really just fucking happen? I mean, I knew that it wasn't her, but I'm like, well, you second guess yourself, Well, maybe it could have been, but wait, no. But I know it wasn't. What the fuck just happened, man?
Yeah, that's what, like I said, we talked about my little experience, and that's all I've done since that happened. That was forever ago. But that's all I've done over the years is try to talk myself when it happened. I tried to talk myself out of it, and I didn't want to believe. I'm not a ghost guy. I don't think about that a lot.
Right.
I've never thought about it since. But when you hear something, it's kind of hard to talk yourself out of it if you experience it. And, there's so much shit that it could be or couldn't. You just don't know. But you kind of know. I think at least I did when I was in something like that. And again, man, I could care less if anybody ever believed that. But I think when you experience something like that, you kind of know.
Well, I would welcome
Ghost Hunters Club.
I would welcome someone to tell me what it was,
I would lean on the side for me, even with my thing. It's easy because I don't have to prove it to anybody. I'm not gonna. If somebody said, "Can you prove it?" I'd say, "No, I got a witness."
Right.
But I probably look more crazy than anything. There's a guy out there that he has that, like, for psychics and shit. He has $1 million in an account where if you could prove you can do mental things or shit like that, he'll give it to you. I don't know if it has to do with ghosts or paranormal, but like he said, no one's ever come and got it. It's still sitting in that account. So that shit's easier to prove. And who knows? Maybe your mind plays tricks on you. I don't know. It's hard to say. You can only go with what you see. Like when in that video, you do hear something.
Who's to say?
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here trying to convince anyone. I'm not saying that they're real. I don't know, man, but all I know is I experienced something that I can't fucking explain. And more than one person, not only did more than one person witness it, but I've got it actually on video.
Right, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's there.
So,
wow.
There could be a very logical explanation. And if there is, I'd like to know it because that would actually kind of put my mind at ease. Because the alternative is that shit's real.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know either, man. It's just fucking weird.
Yeah.
But how many times you watch those shows on TV, and they make a big deal out of nothing? Oh my God, what was that?
I can't watch them because I just think they're fucking stupid.
Yeah.
I really do. There was some guy, I watched a thing on him, and he literally got paid. I think he was a magician or some shit, and he did shit to get people to see it. It's like one of those shows, and that was his job. Like, he did the crazy shit, but he's like, and all the time that I ever did that for that company, there was nothing. It was all just bullshit. Half the time you watch a whole show and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And they'll show you one little thing. I don't know why it's so popular. I think people want to believe. Like I said, the one time that I had something that I thought I was drinking heavily. Now, having said that, I have drank heavily a lot since those days, and I have yet paranormal experience. So there's that too.
Yeah, you know my thoughts on that, dude. I think, well, do you think we're the only living beings in the universe?
I know, no way. I mean,
Yeah. So, in my mind,
if
there's
it's
so
top
much.
tier, we're in some fucking trouble. That's all I got to say.
Right.
If we're the top,
No
look
doubt.
out. I always look at us as like, I know a lot of people have this high opinion of, well, we can fix all the world's problems and one day we'll live in a utopia. And I see it kind of the complete opposite. I see it as if there's a God and he has built something, like we were the first. You ever like work with wood or something, or you build something like your first podcast, and
Right.
you go back and look at it like they're the worst. We were God's first freaking podcast, so to speak, or his first freaking wood table. Like the legs are all off kilter, and
he's probably saying, "Oh, I could do so much better." He's probably saying, "Oh, me, I could do so much better than that."
Oh, he's probably perfected it by now. That's what the other universes are for. But I'll bet they still have conversations, like all the angels and him, and they're like, "Fuck God, remember when you first got started? Have you checked in on them lately? They're just bombing the shit out of each other." I mean, I don't know. That was the early days. That was before I really had a.
That's your best work, big guy. I think we're more like an ant colony, an ant farm on fucking some alien shelf. Look at these idiots. Watch what happens when I shake it.
Or there's the thing that he just fucked up so bad he went, "Fuck it, I'm done." And like broke his broke his shit, broke all of his shit.
You're on your own, fuckers.
Now you're just off fishing somewhere.
Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because so we both believe that there's something else out there. What it is, we don't know.
Sure. I think you have to at this point. Otherwise, like I said, if we're it,
I think there's so much that we just don't understand, and the paranormal shit, we will figure it out someday. But until then, it's well, look at when the Indians first saw motorcycles, right? What'd they call it? They called it an iron horse. Because they just didn't understand. They didn't know. Eventually, they figured it out.
The whole heaven thing comes from, I forget if it was Galileo or Copernicus, one of the philosophers, one of the way smarter than me people. That's why they would always go out and they didn't know what was up there. They thought that, well, that's got to be where we go. What are all those lights? And then finally, a better mind came along and said, well, those are stars, constellations, right. And we're actually, the sun's not rotating around us. And then they were shocked, right? So much so that the Catholic Church lost their shit, right? So you don't know. And then I guess when we blow up this planet and the billionaires have all fled in their rocket ships to try to navigate themselves to another planet. That's what I could see happening.
They're going to the dark side of the moon, man.
And those guys, and they were like, well, these fucking dumb billionaires. And I'm thinking, they see this shit. We're just going to bomb the shit out of each other. And when they do, they're just taking off.
They're going to the dark side of the moon.
Yeah, we're just out of here. We're going to go into orbit. And
where the alien bases are.
Yeah. Like, you ever see the show Space 1999? Did you ever watch that?
Oh, wow. Oh, man. Long time ago. Yeah, long
time
ago.
Deals where they're on the moon, and it gets knocked out into orbit, and it ends up going through all these other fucking universes. That's going to be the billionaires. Their money's not going to be any good. They're going to end up like sucking dick in some freaking horror. You ever read the book The Sparrow?
No.
Is it The Sparrow? Yeah, it's a good book. It's about how they find out how to get into space, but they have to use a comet because the time trajectory system, because it changes. So they have to bore into a comet, and then they take the comet and they write it out, and it sends a Catholic priest with them. And he ends up, so they do find another planet, another universe, another planet. But what ends up happening is they
fucked all the kids.
No, they're freaked out by them. So the priest actually gets prostituted out, man. They put him like in a fuck shop. And these animals, these freaking weird, freaky aliens have never seen anything like that before, so they all want to fuck it. Like, I think it's like 4 years our time. They just could smoke this guy's fucking hole for like, I mean, he's lost his shit. He doesn't even believe in God anymore. And then they finally track him down and they go get him and they bring him back. And of course, he's living with fucking multiple alien rapes and shit. And it's been so long since I've read it, dude. It's like, but it's a good book.
He's got the alien AIDS.
Yeah, dude, it was, I was like, when I was reading that book, I was like, is this, so he's getting raped by aliens? And yeah, that's what it was. They put him in like a fuck shop, like a prostitute, like a chicken ranch.
How many times did you jerk off while reading that book?
A lot. There was a lot of these aliens with, if I remember right, they had like these claws or like fucking razor sharp and they'd swing it at you and cut, because they killed everybody because they were freaked out. So they killed everybody. And then they just fucked the shit out of him for like 4 years. I think it was like 4 years or something. But yeah, that dude was, they were like stuffing their balls in him and everything. It was crazy.
Jesus. What's the name of that book again?
I think it's called The Sparrow.
It's
actually written by a lady. I read another one of her books. I can't remember her name.
Well, she's freaky.
She had a continuation to it. And I thought, well, maybe I'll read that, but maybe I won't.
I mean, how much rape can you actually take in? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, dude, it was a real good story though. Like they explained the science of it, how they would get there, how they would. I think there was like a signal sent out, and they thought it might be friendly, but then they find out those people would be just like we were to Jesus or whatnot. Like it all sounds good when you're talking, but until someone comes along and says I'm Jesus, well, then you know we're fucking scourging him and hanging him on a cross like a fucking painting on a wall,
right?
You know, so yeah.
I'm gonna have to go to confession for this one.
I don't even know how I ended up there. We were talking about other planets. Next thing you know, I'm talking about freaking
Jesus on a cross
in another universe. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to go to confession for this one. But you know, on the cross it has INRI. You know what that stands for?
No.
I'm nailed right in.
Good luck with that. You're not a religious guy, right? What? That's another one of those things, dude. Like, I don't go to church. I don't think about any of that. But if I break that shit down, well, some of it's pretty fucking weird. For one, he's like the first. Isn't he the first prophet that ever walked the earth? I mean, like we've heard of Buddha and was it Allah,
Muhammad?
They've never actually existed. And some of that shit, like I don't know.
I would consider myself spiritual.
Right? Yeah. I would. I think. I don't know.
Not so much religious.
I'm gonna say my prayers after bringing that story up tonight. That's for sure.
I bet you are. You know, I was brought up. You know, I was raised in the Lutheran faith. Years later, converted to Catholicism for Connie's benefit. And then I went through a whole period where I completely lost my faith. Didn't believe in it at all. And now I'm kind of leaning back towards it. I don't know, man. I'm complicated. But I like to find humor in everything. And that shit's funny, man.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest downfall with religion was I was just too fucking selfish and wanted to do things that I wanted to do, and I didn't want anything getting in the way of that. Mm-hmm. And like 50% of the shit I wanted to do wouldn't have been okay with religion, so I just had to bow out. Like, nope.
Because I look at history, and historically, religion was a means to control the masses. For the majority, the populace was uneducated, illiterate, and the priests were the ones who were educated and literate. And to control people, you know, you literally put the fear of God in them. You know, that's where that came from, and that's to keep them in control. You can't do this, or it's a sin, and you're going to go to hell. You got to pay your taxes because if you don't, it's a sin. You're going to hell, and you can't dance next to a woman with more than 18 inches of daylight because that's fornication and that's a sin. Shut the fuck up, man. I don't believe that's what God's mindset was. I really don't. I think God wants you to live morally, but I don't believe in all these super restrictions. I just, you can see the time periods, how they change, and it's control.
Yeah. Or that's really what it is. And then it has a reverse effect when I have some Mormon friends. I've known, that they get pretty deep. And some of the stories I've heard where they can't, they're not supposed to have sex before they get married. So they end up fucking rushing marriage because when you hit 18, you got all those chemicals going through, your freaking nuts are swollen up, you don't know what to do with yourself. And you're like, well, what are my options?
I'd go over there and fuck that sheep.
What are my options? I'm not supposed to have sex until I get married. So they would tell me these stories where they're like, some of these guys that can't really get girls that are going to on missions, and they meet these girls in other countries, and they're just like fucking traveling over there and they marry them because they want to get laid so badly. They're freaking balls are aching. I mean, could you imagine? Could you fucking imagine that? Like when you were...
No, dude. No.
That's why that whole religion shit didn't fit in with me.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, this is just way too painful.
I'm fucking sick.
Like having a bug in your nose or something. You got to blow it out. You pick it when no one's looking. You got to... It's your drive. It's your sex drive.
And sometimes you got to dig. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm glad you do because I have no idea what I'm talking about right now. Right. Anyway. It's a total fucking control, man. Now, I'm anti-religion as far as an institution goes. I fully support if you believe in God and you have a relationship with him. I'm actually kind of jealous of that. But I don't believe in the institution of religion on a whole. It's so corrupt and, preys on, I won't say, well, for the most part, innocent, but more naive people.
Yeah, but on the other side of that, it's funny because I think that when we were growing up, that we were more liberal in terms of, religion's kind of failed in a lot of ways. I remember the number one thing we heard all the fucking time, dude, was, did you know? And remember, anybody would spew this out. Well, religion's killed more people than anything. And that was like, so we kind of grew up hearing a lot of that.
Right.
And I think it's trickled down into our kids. And because of that, we're seeing, because there's no spiritual, there's no guideline, there's nothing, there's no belief or faith. Now you're seeing this crazy freaking, it's just like anarchy. It's like, it's like spiritual or soul. I was reading something, or I think I watched it, but the guy was talking about how we need something to believe in. We need to have faith, and there's got to be a religion. And if we don't, we'll turn to something else. And you can see that. Mm-hmm. These groups, man, these fucking people in their groups that, whether it's transsexual or whether it's whatever the hell. So everyone's got to belong to some sort of fucking group. And it's because they don't, at least from what I can see, don't want to believe in a God. And, I look back on that now and I think, well, they did tell us so often that, religion killed more people, and you can see it happening right now.
Yeah.
But shit, what's the alternative? I mean, what's the alternative? We're all getting our peckers cut off, and now we're freaking, we're vaxxing up with everything and drugs. If you're having a problem with focus or concentration or anxiety or sleep or anything, a doctor would be more than happy to put you in a fucking prescription.
This is what happens when they took religion out of schools. And then inevitably we'll get the argument of, well, not everyone's Christian. Well, guess what? Bottom line is this country was founded on basically Judeo-Christian beliefs. Don't like it? Don't practice it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But that's what it was founded on. And if you're that against it, get the fuck out.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're seeing now. The mass immigration. there's no way what we see here. I watch a lot of this. I haven't really been following Israel thing. That's somebody said it. I heard him say one day that if Alexander the Great couldn't fix this shit, and fucking Joe Biden's not going to fix it. And that's said because that guy can barely fucking get out of bed without dying. So, I think you see the crumbling of the mass immigration. You can't. There's no way you can have open borders like that, and you can just let anyone come in with all these different ideas. I seen it, and I know you've seen it traveling and living in different areas. That culture shock is a real fucking thing, man. Like when people come from different areas, I used to see it all the time in Vegas. I'd see just like people argue or quit talking to each other over the stupidest fucking thing. But what it really came down to is their views, because of where they grew up, were just so fucking different that they couldn't. They just separate. Mm-hmm. And it's a division that happens. I mean, I would just see it in my community. I'd see it at the schools. I would see it. There was just, and then if you get to the degree we're going, where it's almost countrywide now, there's no fucking way it can't stand. And you're going to see more and more violence. You'll see more and more division. There's no way you can't. If a lot of people don't want to assimilate anymore, then there's no way.
It's going to get way worse before it gets better.
No, it's definitely going to get worse, and it's never going to get better. Not if you keep the open borders. Not if you keep letting people in that really don't want to be. Look at what happened to France. I mean, France is an absolute nightmare now because the people want to use France for what it's worth and make money off of it, but they don't want to assimilate. They fucking hate French people, but they want to be there because there's more opportunity. And now you can see what they're doing. It's insane. It's coming here. It went to England. It went to Germany. She was famous for opening those borders and letting everybody in. And then she said, we should have never done that. So
I haven't completely lost faith. I still have a little bit of faith that someone's going to come along eventually and put an end to the dumb shit. Rambo? Like we'll get a strong leader to come in and say, sorry, we're shutting the fucking borders. Sorry, we're going back to taking care of Americans.
You got to shut the borders for at least a fucking year at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
1 year. The first thing that I would do is pull all visas. All of them done. You're done. It's dude. I when I was younger, I tried to get into Garth Brooks was the big thing. Mm-hmm. Fucking 25. You couldn't get in. He'd like do 3 concerts a night in the same city, and you couldn't get tickets. He had a fucking lottery, dude. He was so popular, and you still couldn't get tickets. And guess what? When you couldn't get tickets, they closed the doors. It said sold out. And that's what America needs is one big fucking sign that says sold out for, pulling visas, shutting down the border for at least a minimum of a year before you could start to get this back in track. But they're not going to do that. So it's never going to happen. And that you can say, people will say, well, that's racist. No, it's not, because in order to have a good thing, you have to have borders. None of us, dude, have homes without fucking doors on them.
Right.
Nobody.
Right. For a reason.
Locks. And I fucking guarantee you locks in California, where they're like one of the big, those fuckers have multiple locks, like a whole door with just locks, and I lived in Vegas, dude. You know what the big thing was? Was my favorite. A big thing out there, and I actually thought about it for a while, because like when I first went out there, we ended up being slow in the industry that I was in. I thought, well, I'll take a welding class and start making these bars for windows and doors, because that was a really big thing, dude. They put these bars, like steel iron bars for doors, but then that same person, dude, it's fucking crazy. I have friends that the first thing they do when they buy a house is buy a steel wrought iron door for their front door, and then but you'll hear them go, oh, but I love the neighborhood. It's real safe. Vegas is I like it. You bought your first purchase wasn't a fucking new sofa. You had a welder come out and construct you a fucking steel door.
So is it that bad in Vegas?
Oh yeah, dude. The home invasions are bad, but a lot of those places keep them quiet. Yeah, there was a home invasion 2-3 a night, violent home invasions where people were getting fucking shot. One night, man, I can remember this one because it's disturbing when you hear it, and I slept so poorly there because I just always thought it's going to happen here some night. Most of my neighbors got their doors kicked in or windows broken out at some point. I had a Doberman So I don't know if he barked a lot, it kept people away, but I never had any bad luck like that. But there was a case one night where a guy broke into somebody's house and he fucking hit the dad over the hammer with the claw hammer, beat him senseless, and raped for like the entire night his
Jesus.
daughter right in front of him. Like he hogtied a dude, and yeah, and then he ended up killing him with the claw hammer.
Jesus.
He left the guy alive. So he's like all fucked up now. He's kind of barely with it, but I mean that was a bad case. But fuck, some of my buddies, a lot of my buddies had close calls, or it was a pretty big thing. I had one buddy I knew. He was actually a cop out there. He woke up in the middle of the night. There's a fucking guy in his room. He just got up and tackled him. But yeah, it was pretty common. It's funny because all those guys that say, well, it's a safe place and, open these borders, and they're all sleeping with guns by their beds. They have silencers fitted on them so they don't blow out their wife's ears when they have to shoot in the middle of the night. That's the way it is. But it's that's why we have doors. And then in some places, that's why you have steel doors.
Right.
You have bars on your fucking door because you don't want that to happen. Here where we're at, like we're pretty much in the fucking country. I feel safe. I mean, I still have my cameras up and shit like that, but I feel
generally
for the most part, yeah. Well, it's nothing like Vegas, dude. When I was in Vegas, I was like, "Fuck, when's it gonna happen?" It never did. But right before I moved, this is how bad it was there. Right before I moved, and it didn't matter where you were at. You could be in $1 million neighborhood, and they'd still do it, and they do it in broad daylight. And how they would do it was they come up and they knock on your door because in Vegas there's so many people. They go solicit and knock on doors and try to sell shit that nobody thinks anything of it. So they'll knock on your door. If you don't answer, they'll just either try the front door or kick it in or go around back and throw a brick through the window. And right before I moved, my wife had already moved back to Missouri, and I was loading up my pods. I had my 2 pods out in the driveway, so I'm loading those fuckers up. And we're, at the house the house had sold. We needed to get out and leave, and all of a sudden, a cop car pulls up. It's like 12 on a Saturday, and I went up to, I talked to a neighbor who was out across the street, and he was military, and he was telling me the story. Like they came up, they knocked on, there's like 2 houses up. They knocked on a guy's door at noon Saturday. Nobody answered. They went in, grabbed his, like a fucking Colt Python or some shit with a scope on it. They grabbed that. That's because that's the number one thing they always want. They want the guns. They search the house for the guns. My other neighbor, same thing. They just take the guns. That's all. They look for guns and then they take them. So they left that, and then my neighbor said, I didn't know if the guy knew him or not. He goes, I watched the whole thing. He goes, they left, and then they came back and they parked in his drive again, and they went back into his house, and this time they came out with a 12-pack of Orange Crush soda. So they fucking they left and they came back. Yeah, and they fucking went back in and got his pop. And then that's how brazen it is. That's middle of the day, dude. On a Sunday, Vegas is always sunny. So
that's crazy, man.
I was like, holy shit. And I looked at him because that was going to be like my last few days where I was putting the final touches on my pod. I'm like packing shit up in there. And I looked at him and I said, fucking good luck, dude. See ya. Good luck with your fucking future break in and scare.
Man, that's a horrible way to live, man. So what do you think should be done about that situation? How do you combat that?
Dude, it's hard when you have a city where when they try to, it's that liberal mentality. It's that, I know it sounds bad to say it, there's an aspect to it that they don't want to question anything. You like, I think when you know that a plane that flew into the trade centers was flown by Arabs, and there's Arabs out to get you, and then or whatever, Muslims or whatever. Remember when Bush was like, well, we're going to look for these people, and everyone was outraged about it. But that's the people that were going to do it, right? I mean, those were. I know people hate to hear that, but if someone says this guy, keep a lookout for a guy in a blue truck, he's the one that's been breaking into houses. You don't just say, oh, I don't want to judge people that have blue trucks. You look for the guy at the blue truck, and that's kind of the thing with Vegas is because people wanted to be so. Not cast judgment. They just kind of let shit go that maybe they even see as suspicious. but they don't want to hurt feelings or they don't want to make anybody feel weird. And then there was a lot of Section 80. I mean, I had a lot of cop friends out there, and there is all the same thing, the shit they'd see. I had one cop buddy tell me, he said, he goes, "Oh, dude," he goes, "if you fucking see the shit I see while you're sleeping, you'd never leave your house." You know, like it was just.
I wonder if that comes from the mob mentality when they ran shit back in the day.
Nah, dude, these were just thugs for the most part. A lot of them were. It's just.
I mean that whole look the other way mentality.
No, I think it's because it's a Western. You know, if you go far west, their whole idea was it's different. They look at things differently. They don't want to judge. They don't want to. They don't want to sometimes call it what it is, even though they know that that's probably what it is. And the whole country's become like that right now. The whole Western world's become like that, where we're so worried about hurting people's feelings that we're dropping our guard. And when you lower your defenses like that, because you're worried about hurting someone's feelings.
What you're saying is that if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, then you can't call it a duck because that's offensive. You have to call it a migratory waterfowl.
Yeah, well, it would be like saying if snakes had feelings, rattlesnakes had feelings, and you know that most deadly snake bites come from rattlesnakes if you're like in Texas or somewhere, but you didn't want to hurt their feelings, so you would risk getting bit to not risk hurting their feelings. Like, I don't want you to leave, because I don't want to hurt your feelings, and you know, and then you get bit, and you're like, you know, that's kind of what sometimes. It sometimes just is what it is. And, you know, again, cultures are different. You know, you're seeing that more than ever right now. I think you're seeing the shit that I'm seeing on TV is fucking nuts. This isn't the America that you and I grew up in. We didn't wish death on anybody ever. Well, I did. I guess quite a few times. Like if someone would beat me out or something, that fucking cocksucker dies. But it's just different. It is, and it could be multiple reasons. I'm no expert, but I'm sure you've lived there. If you've lived in, you know, areas where you know, you're not going to have a utopia here. It's not going to fucking happen. For one, we're not that important. We're just not that important. So, you know, look at that. So we're about to get into another war, and that's, speaking of which, we better get on to our topic because it's kind of looking similar to that right now.
Yeah, look at that. 52 minutes into, and we're getting into the topic. The topic of the podcast. Well, you know, here on the Nostalgically Hip Podcast, not only do we like to bring up entertaining topics, but we also like to talk about historical and relevant topics to bring back some of that nostalgia. And hopefully it'll educate you or and maybe find some entertainment into it as well. But the topic we're going to start tonight, we're not going to finish tonight. It's probably going to be a couple episode topic, but we're going to talk about Vietnam and the Vietnam War. And it's and how it's history, but it's still relevant to today.
More than ever. It's looking, except for we have a whole different form of protesters today.
Correct. Yeah. It's funny. It's just funny how the more things change, the more they stay the same. We've changed, but yet we're back to the exact same way things were in Vietnam. But it has changed. I don't know, man. I'm talking nonsense right now. Anyway, let's talk about the Vietnam War. My father was a veteran of the Vietnam War, which a lot of our Vietnam veterans are unfortunately they're fading at a pretty rapid rate, and they think it has a lot to do with the whole Agent Orange shit that they used over there. But Vietnam is a very important point in our country because, well, it's the first war we lost. Straight up lost it. And it wasn't due to lack of military superiority. It had everything to do with worthless politicians. They got us into it. They don't let us do the job appropriately, and they have a hard time getting us out of it. But Vietnam basically all stemmed from the threat of communism. North Vietnam, well, actually, it was Vietnam at the time, back in the early 50s, around 1954, when they had the Indochina War there. They had the French. The French were trying to colonize Vietnam. And, of course, it was all because of the threat of communism. Well, they got their asses handed to them. Huge, huge defeat. So, of course, America, in the wise wisdom that some of our senior politicians had, hey, we got to get in there and stop that spread. So we sent advisors in there as early as 1954. And, well, it just kind of grew into a major shit show. Ryan, you were talking earlier about the Gulf of Tonkin.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was kind of later on, right? We were already kind of making our way. I think it starts in 54, right? That's when we first really French leave in 55. Like you said, they get their ass handed to them. They were kind of there for the same reasons. They were worried about communism. It was spreading, after the war. The people got to remember this was before Reagan helps to bring him down, and him and Gorbachev have their little ideas, and the wall finally falls. But communism was really growing, and it was in Russia, Romania. At that time, it had spread into China, and China's right next to Vietnam and Cambodia. So the big fear, and this is kind of why we were going over there, is to try to help out the South, right? Because there was a leader, I think is it DM was his name,
DM.
that we liked. He had some ideas that we weren't completely down with. And then there was Ho Chi Minh in the north, and
Right.
The biggest fear was that the communist ideas were just going to swallow up. It was already going through north. The north wanted to start infiltrating down into the south, and we needed to preserve that, because if we don't stop it from spreading there, then it swallows up most likely Cambodia, and then eventually it would make its way on down to Australia, which sounds crazy today if you think about it, but it would have eventually made its way down that way. And then that was the big fear, for sure, because it was spreading and it was growing, and there was an agenda to make it grow. It kind of puts us helping out weaponry. At first, we kind of had to go over there, would help them with drills, because I think it's one of the treaties. I can't think of it right off. Maybe you can look that up, or maybe you know it. But basically made it so we wouldn't, if we showed combatant soldiers there, then that could be taken the wrong way, right?
Right.
Then
We sent advisors there.
Yes, it would have to be people that were just, hey, we're just here to help, and then it kind of starts out that way. We start to bring at this point, Kennedy's still president. So we'll have to get into that more, what your thoughts are on Kennedy and his feelings of it. Some people feel that, because he's the one that it's Eisenhower, right, that takes us into it, or kind of brings us through it. Then Kennedy comes in. But he's the guy who kind of, he gets McNamara, who at the time, I think he was the big Ford genius. He had the analytics guy. So you can see the government start to bring in the analytics geniuses and stuff like that. McNamara comes in. They're kind of advising Kennedy. And then Kennedy's assassinated, right? So that's kind of where, after that, he's assassinated in 63, 11/22/63. And then Johnson, who really always he probably would have ran after Kennedy's terms if he's not assassinated, wanted to be president, just didn't want to be president I'm not going to say the way he got it, but he didn't want to be president at the time that he got it, and that was during wartime. He didn't want to be a wartime president. So he gets it, doesn't really know what to do. Kennedy He knew that Kennedy, or he thought that Kennedy, at least the idea was, he thought that Kennedy, this was his war. Kind of, he was the one that was kind of pushing the initiative to maybe, there was a big fear that America would look weak if the communists started to take over. That it had happened with other presidents and other countries where they'd fallen, certain countries had fallen, and ideas had fallen. So those presidents that were in power at that time looked weak for ever letting it happen. You're kind of seeing it happen now with another president who probably could have prevented a lot of this had he not been so stubborn with a prior president's.
Whomever you may be referring to, I just don't know.
But
let's go, Brandon.
Right. So he kind of takes over in I think it's December of that year. He kind of starts moving forward with everything. He's being advised, the same advisors. He keeps on the same advisors Kennedy had. So these are pretty much wartime advisors. These guys, like you said earlier, they want to get this war going. They want to continue this war. And you got to, one of the things I think is we really thought this would be quick. I think there's another war we thought would be pretty quick, right?
Yep.
We have a tendency to get into these long wars, and Vietnam's almost the same thing. Almost 54 to 74, I think.
75.
Starts pulling us out of there.
75.
So you have this mentality of they're not going to be able to compete with us. We're going to be dropping we're bringing raids, bombings, the kind of shit. We'll get this over with quickly. But it hasn't gotten there yet. We're not even really completely into it. Johnson sends up, and that's when you're talking about the Tonkin. They actually send a boat. Now, our logistics say that I think they were 1,400 kilometers. You know more about this than me. So they're bringing the boats. 1,400 kilometers would seem like a fairly safe. You're not inside their
territorial waters.
Kilometers should be enough. That was our basis. North Vietnam had a different idea on that. They thought that, their basis was that's too close. So they send out, I think it was sonar vessels, right? They send out the sonar vessels. It's dark. There's no moonlight. It's choppy waters. There's two boats, and I can't remember Maddox was one of them.
Let's see, the Maddox and look it up real quick. Okay, the Maddox is part of that Oh, and it looks like there was the Turner Joy.
Okay, yep. So you got the Maddox and Turner Joy. They're both going in there, but they send out. So what ends up happening is one of the boats has to turn, hightail another. They got this idea that they're just being bombarded. I think they said they fired 250 shells or something like that. 250 and only hit like once out of all that. So there's this massive exchange going on. No one can really say whether or not what's happening. You can only get, because the crew that's fleeing at this point is telling them that sonar boats are trying to attack them, and they were dropping mines at that point, or what do they call those? I can't think.
Depth charges?
Yeah, depth charges. They're dropping depth charges. They think they're surrounded. They're fleeing. They finally get out. There's a little excursion. So the report goes through to Washington. Hey, we've been attacked. Now they're on the offensive. And I think they kind of start to put it together that, hey, maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought. And that's the whole Tonkin incident. Maybe it's not as bad. And maybe they do have confirmation that the North did do somewhat offensive, but then they denied. There was no proof that they did the second one because there was like the second day. And but by that time they'd already sent, the word had already got back to Washington. The calls had already been made. Johnson being Johnson had already made his public speech and announcement. McNamara's up there talking about what the initiative is. America's behind it. Like, yeah, well, fuck yeah, if they're attacking us, let's do this. So instead of calling it, maybe some misinformation, Nixon just keeps, walking it back, keeps it going. And then, so that's kind of the controversy there. I don't know what your thoughts are on it. But
Yeah,
a lot of people said maybe they used it to draw us in the war, or
I
maybe it
think
was a
I think
mistake.
100% they used it to draw us into war. I think it's a classic false flag operation.
So you think, I mean, that would have been something you were kind of you, back then. And like I said, it was dark. There's no moonlight. It's choppy waters. This was a young crew too. They were young, pretty inexperienced crew. They're firing all these shots. They're not really hitting anything. So their self-doubt starting to go down the drain. Who knows what was going on? That is they're fleeing, is they're trying to get out of there. They send the word, but I mean, yeah, it could have been a false flag, could have been blown up maybe to get us into this war.
I don't
Like I said,
blame
we thought we're going to cut right through these guys.
I don't blame the crew of the ship at all. Not a single bit. I blame the politicians for knee jerking and throwing us into something without doing a bit more of investigation and find out what really happened, which really leads me to believe that what did Hillary Clinton say? Never let a good crisis go to waste.
That was Rahm Emanuel.
Somebody said that shit.
Rahm Emanuel that was good old Obama's watch there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of them fucktards. That's all I know. But that's the mentality. And I'm not saying that's a Democrat or Republican. That's a fucking bipartisan thing. Yeah, they all have agendas.
You're right. I mean, if you look at all, at the time there was Ho Chi Minh was kind of infiltrating the South via, that he was using the Cambodia, what was called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and he was bringing shit in and kind of getting all the way down there without going through Vietnam. So there was that. That's actually when we finally decide to get into it. When they finally said, "Oh, fucking, let's just go through with this." They start bringing in the planes. They start bringing in. There's raids. At that point, the infiltration starts happening. One of the first things they do take out is the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So right there, would be considered a offensive threat. Now you're attacking something that they were using for transportation. So that's not going to go down well. That kind of kicks the whole thing into play.
No, that was their main supply route.
Yeah, because you couldn't shoot straight down through because you have these conflicting. There's. So it was the Vietnamese, but they were called Viet Cong. Viet Cong was communist for Vietnam. So they're Viet Cong, basically Viet communist. They were the ones launching the biggest wartime threat they had, and then eventually later on they'd bring in the less experienced guys. But they were ready to go. They were ready to start infiltrating. They were using that pass to get the Ho Chi Minh Trail to get down into there. And then
the Viet Cong were the nasty fighters. You had the North Vietnamese Army regulars, which, sometimes they'd be a fierce fighting force, sometimes they weren't, but the Viet Cong were fighting for their homeland, and they were vicious, and there was no stopping them. And it was
but they were mostly being pushed too by the communists.
Oh, for sure. Well, they're being trained and supported by.
Yeah, and they were the ones they were the best trained. They had the best weaponry. They actually had some decent weapons until I think it was 65. They just reinvent everything, and that's when we kind of the movies that we've seen so often, and the platoons, which we're going to talk about those, because this was a huge thing when we were kids, right? There were so many movies on it. We've already discussed the Deer Hunter a lot. There's Full Metal Jacket, Hamburger Hill. We see a lot of that guerrilla warfare, and that came in 55, I believe, when they decided, "Fuck, let's just kind of pull this. It's not working. Let's do it differently." There was just all different tactics at that point, and
the movie "We Were Soldiers Once" is an excellent depiction of basically the first battle of the Vietnam War. It's from the Vietnam veterans I talked to, it's a pretty close representation. But if you would rather read it. The book is 10 times better, obviously.
Is
But
that the book? What's it called? We Were Soldiers Once?
yeah, We Were Soldiers Once. It stars Mel Gibson.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Fantastic movie.
Okay.
But it's it's a true story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I might check that out. Um, it starts to become ugly there, but I think again we thought this was going to be quick. It was going to be easy. We definitely had the superior um, weaponry. We thought this would be quick. It's not the first time we've thought that. You'd think we'd fucking learn, right? You'd think we'd be like, oh, like we're seasoned veterans, but we don't.
You know who learns?
Do it again, huh?
The military learns, but our hands are tied.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's important to bring up that there were a lot of military leaders that were actually on the ground there or close. They knew kind of what was going on over there. They knew a lot about the territory.
Mm-hmm.
They knew a lot about the issues that were really there. So they would speak up about it. But you got the bureaucrats back here, the McNamara's, the analytics professors and stuff like that think that, don't worry, we got this. We know what we're doing. I can't remember who the main guy was who warned him. He was actually
talking about the general.
Yeah, because there was
Westmoreland was
Ridgway. Ridgway was one of them, but I think he was actually pushing to do it. I think he wanted to go to war. There was another one who had warned against it. I can't remember his name.
Warned
so
against
I apologize for not. I should know that, but there's also a religious aspect too. You can remember. I'm sure you've seen the monk, because that was growing pretty rapidly throughout Vietnam, South Vietnam at the time. So they were kind of that was a thing. So you got these two different ideas. You got the North wanting to take the South and the spread of communism. You got the South kind of wanting to fight it off. Two different leaders with two different ideas, North and South. And then at the same time, you have this, is it Buddhism? It's Buddhism, right? Yep. That's really coming through. And they're getting that, I think, through China at the time. Because China had a major influence on them. Well, I think most people have probably seen the monk who he douses himself in gasoline in the middle of the street, and then lights himself on fire. So you can see the passion and the religion that was also at play. So you've got what is it? The Tet Offensive. You've got all this, the Tet Offensive coming in. You've got the North wanting to swallow up the South and become, it's the spread of communism. You've also got the growth of a major religion. That's pretty powerful, more powerful than a lot of people even, and I think, knew about. But I think some of the leaders were speaking out and saying, there's more to this. And of course there was.
The religion aspect was heavily downplayed, for sure.
Yeah. You think then, and I can't say I don't agree with you that the Gulf of Tonkin probably was, maybe it was a power play. What'd you say? Just false. Leads us into this war. I mean, how many people were killed? Millions, right? Like, that's another thing is North Korea was slaughtering a lot of their people, a lot of their farmers, saying they were just troublemakers against the idea.
North Korea or
huh?
You said North Korea.
Oh, sorry, North Vietnam. Yeah. Well, we'll do Korea sometime. Hatch that out and edit it. But that was kind of a big thing. They were actually just getting rid of the people that were against the system. And I think they were killing like 15,000 just regular citizens.
I think
a pretty good genocide deal down there too.
I think I read there were 2 million North Vietnamese citizens killed.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm sure people have seen the videos too, where the way they did it, they would just roll into the South. They were relentless. There's a video I remember seeing as a kid, and I was just shocked because it was the first time I seen somebody actually get shot in the head. When you see it on TV, it doesn't look anything like what it looks like in real life. And I remember the North soldier lining that guy up and then putting a gun to his head and pulling the trigger and just pumping out like a water faucet. And I remember, holy fuck! And there was some brutal shit. It was a brutal, brutal war. And they were better than what we thought, and they were ready to do it.
That's the thing. You see, I really feel that America, we just need to mind our own fucking business. It's pretty arrogant of us to go over to another country and think that we're going to impose our culture on them and then get upset when they resist.
Right. Yeah. And then in the end, it doesn't fucking matter anyways, because the North does swallow up the South. As soon as we pull out, we pull out. Would you say 75?
You said swallow and pull out in the same sentence.
Sorry. It's been a long one. But yeah, so he pulls us out in 75. All kinds of deaths. We're even dealing with shit back here. We'll get into that later on, but the protest, there's a whole fucking generation of people that were, basically they were strong Democrats, hippies, artists, stuff like that. They're protesting, creating art and movies and songs and stuff like that. And we can kind of see this. It's kind of funny. We were talking about it earlier, how much that's changed, because now we alleged Democrats, but they're all for fucking murder and war now. It's
Antifa.
Really crazy. They were some of the biggest. I think during that time they took to Washington, the protesters did. And it was like the biggest fucking march protest ever of, I want to say 100,000 people. I think 20,000 marched into Washington, 10 to 20,000. I think that was the largest ever to stop war, to stop the killing. A lot of your dad probably wasn't treated too well because they were blamed for it, but that's a huge, that's one of the things, like, just knowing, if you know your history well, you see how much we've changed as a society to basically fucking just kill. Back then it was totally different.
Peace, love.
Yeah, peace,
not
love,
war.
And yeah, and we actually got good shit out of it. Like, there's John Lennon leaves the Beatles, and around that time, and his very first, I forget the first song, but Imagine comes out. Give Peace a Chance. That's his very first single. It's all about the war. It's influenced by that war. Now we just get protesters. We don't get any good art out of it. We're fucking record studio shit, so.
That all stems from the fact that Vietnam was basically the first truly publicized war. We had live TV, live images coming back nightly on the evening news, where you didn't have that with World War II or any previous conflicts, because you had to go to the movies to catch newsreels of it. So
yeah, I think that's what I'd called this probably about 20 years ago, that the media was most powerful. At least they were. I think people are kind of seeing them for what they are now, but they were the most powerful. We allow them into that war. It's the first real war, and they go in. There were some atrocities by both sides, Americans for sure as well. They weren't right, but they happened. And, the media was more open about shit back then. For better or for worse, they reported it factually.
Right.
What they seen was what you got. Yeah, I'm not so certain. I'm pretty certain that you don't get that today. They tell you based upon how they want things to go or what direction they want them to go. And that's different. While the media still has the power and it's still the one thing that the average Joe goes to for information, you're getting it differently today. And it's funny because when I first studied that war years ago, I thought, yeah, if the media would have just maybe not talked about a lot of the atrocities that were happening there, and just kind of let the soldiers be soldiers. It's a rough war. I mean, some of these people, most of them were fucking. They were drafting people that didn't want to be there. They were doing lotteries to get people to go over there. They're not ready for this. They were never ready for this, and you don't know who they are, what kind of person, what kind of character, the
Exactly.
position they have, and you're putting them into a war. So some shit's gonna happen. If you, and I'm not saying you hide it or you cover it up, but maybe for a little while until you get all the facts.
Yeah,
Now they
exactly.
didn't do that. And
Let's report on it, and that's it. Let's not dwell on it.
right, yeah, and they wanted to be honest. They wanted to be upfront. They wanted to show people a different side. Hey, this is war. It's fucking ugly, and it is, and it was. And what you get today is it's just so it's so weird because the media is still 100% involved. The minute that we look at this recent Israel thing, right? And I'm not following a whole lot, but the minute that something goes down, there's already journalists over there. That fucking it's like 5 minutes. It's
It's
like
like
those
fucking vultures on roadkill.
yeah, they're there and they're reporting, and quite honestly, they report one side, then they walk it back because it's not beneficial to a side that they're supposed to be whatever caping
Whoopsie.
to, and then they don't even fucking apologize and say we were misinformed about that. They love to use that word, by the way, misinformation, when it applies to Joe Blow, average citizen, but they
Right.
never fucking use it when it applies to them. And most of the shit that they say is misinformation. So you can see
Yeah, fuck those guys.
yeah, right. You can see the contrast, and it's funny because there's so much more, there's so much that's exactly like it, and there's so much that's just so fucking different. It's unbelievable. But I hope to get into the media side of that, and then of course I want to talk about my favorites always, like the nostalgically hip shit. I want to talk about the movies because this was really a big thing for us. I mean, it was hard pressed. It was such a touchy war at first, early
Mhm.
70s. People stayed away from it. They weren't ready for it.
Yes.
It was ugly time. Then you start to get like the Deer Hunter comes out. That kind of opens the door, and then boom, there's just a big explosion of wars. And I want to cover some of those maybe individually or all together later on. But like we get the Deer Hunter, we get Platoon, we get Full Metal Jacket. I know you like that. We get Rambo,
Hamburger Hill.
huge Vietnam ties. Apocalypse Now, what's that? 79.
Great fucking
Classic.
movie.
And they wanted to actually, I think they were trying to film that in Vietnam during that time, but there was so much shit going on. They ended up doing it in, I want to say the Philippines, or I'm
I
probably
think it
right.
was Thailand, I think.
Thailand.
I
And then
think. I could be wrong.
Missing in Action, right? I mean, it was
Oh, yeah.
huge. Almost every major star at that time in the 80s or soon after everybody got over the damage, the trauma from that war, started making a movie where they were
Uncommon Valor.
yeah, that was a Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman, and it was the Ross Perot story.
Was it really?
Yeah.
No
a lot of people
shit.
don't
That was
realize
his
that.
kid? Like, because that's what it was about, right? They go to get his kid out. He puts
Right.
together his own.
I'll double check. I'm pretty sure that's the Ross Perot story.
I just watched that recently. Patrick Swayze's in that.
Yeah.
Rookie.
Yeah.
Cobb's in it too, dude. It's fucking good. It's a good movie.
It's a good movie, man.
Those are just the ones I can think of. We could probably punch in or Google Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause it just was a huge, it's huge. It's such a bad war that we stayed away from it for so long. And then once they kicked in, I think it was with the Deer Hunter. There were some cheesy ones.
There are a lot of cheesy hacks, man.
But dude, almost every fucking, it was crazy because almost every movie that there would be some sort of guy comes back, he's affected, damaged by that war. And that's
Born
how
on the 4th of July.
What's that?
Born on the 4th of July.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, Good Morning Vietnam, right? That's it's
Yep.
comedy, but it's there's just so I want to get into that later on. I want to do the media. I want to
Tropic Thunder.
was that Vietnam? Was it?
It was no, it was modern times, but doing a Vietnam movie.
Yeah.
Fucking hilarious, man. I think that's such an underrated movie.
It's been years, dude. I seen that when it came out. I seen it at the theater, but that was the last time. Yeah, there's a lot we could go into. Do you have anything to add? What is we can go into like the American response, which is it's at the time people were kind of behind it. I think they took a poll in '85. I think I put that down. They took a poll in '85, and like the majority of Americans at that time thought we, like you just said, shouldn't have been there.
Mhm.
Had no business being there. And then I think they took another poll in like 2018, and most Americans, they were a little more okay with it. Of course, you can see that change coming, but a lot of them were like, I don't fucking care either way. But I think
Right.
as you kind of get the facts, on Afghanistan, all of us were like, go kill some people. And then we kind of start to go, okay, maybe there weren't weapons of mass destruction. Maybe there weren't, but in any case, you could look at the WMDs, Bush's WMDs, and compare that to McNamara or Kennedy or Johnson's Gulf of Tonkin deal. Whatever it was, Johnson did have the opportunity to walk that back, admit it was a mistake, and stop that war from happening. That's not what they did.
No. Basically, when you're in that position, you pretty much have narcissistic personality traits, and you're not going to admit when you're wrong, because in your mind you're not wrong. So of course
They
he.
never want to look. That's the worst part, and that was his case. They never want to look. They never want to look bad in front of the people. They feel that it makes them look weak. This is again, and we'll talk about the more things change, the more they stay the same. Johnson gets the presidency by, as we know, by default, because Kennedy's killed. He swore in that day. He takes over, kind of follows through with the whole initiative. But what ends up happening that following November is he wins by landslide. Now, it's interesting because we had Mark Sargent on here, and we were talking about what happens. Is there a COVID-like response to the next election before? Do they put us into something like that? He's like, no, that's not going to happen. And his theory, and it's looking more and more like he's going to be right, but his theory was that they would get us into a war with Russia. It looks like it's leaning that way. They're sure as hell not trying to keep us out of war. That's for sure. So it's looking more and more like that could be the case. Well, you think about the landslide that Johnson wins by, and it's a fucking landslide, right? No, everybody's like, yes. And the guy that got us here, the guy that took over, we're going to stick with that. And that was what I said to Sargent on that podcast. I said that, so you just don't switch. And he's like, you don't switch horses mid-race. And that's kind of the case with Johnson. If history repeats itself, they could be hoping that's the case with Biden, right?
I think they hope that. I honestly don't see it happening. And people in this country have changed. And man, I go down the YouTube rabbit hole a lot, and I've seen a lot of videos of black people straight up saying, fuck Biden. They're tired of this shit, a lot. So I don't think that he's gonna, if he does win, it definitely won't be by a landslide. And I'm not so sure he's going to, because people are just fed up, man.
Yeah, I agree. I do think he's gonna, I thought he'd probably leave last month in October. He didn't. I think it's a power struggle right now. I think they're leaning to see where this goes, with Trump, how they can maybe get him out of the way. But I really do think that there's no way, if he stays in it, I think that he wins. Well, I can tell you this: there's no way Trump's your next president, and I've told you my thoughts on that. But he won't be in the White House.
I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I really want him to go away right now. It's just it's to the point where it's not helping the country. This shit's not healthy for the country, man.
Well, it's not his fault though. This is deeper. He wasn't this pariah that he was turned into. Let's not forget that the real thing that turned him into this racist. That, by the way, they still don't have anything on him legit like we do on Biden. We have tons of videos on Biden and tons of freaking gas on him saying terrible things that he should know better to say, but he still does it. He still says it. The thing that they got Trump on and where they was closing the borders and building the wall, and they were like, all of a sudden, no, we don't do that. That's not how America does. And just like the vaccine, we won't take it if he made it. And they take it. They not only do they take it, but they're trying to force you to take it. Not only are they building the wall now, but if they are really truly building a wall, I've heard a lot of takes that they won't build a wall. They're just going to say they'll build a wall while they rush in a bunch more people and just make it look like they're trying to do something. So, but still though, he said, I'm going to build the wall. That's really what got Trump labeled a racist. And so he was a creation of the media. It's not his fault that he went to war with people that buy ink by the barrel. And that's what really happened. And, I remember when he started calling them fake news and shit, I thought, oh, fuck, isn't there an old phrase that goes along with that? And then he did it anyway. But he exposed a lot of people in the process because, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I don't ever remember knowing Dan Rather's political side until Trump came along, and all of a sudden he's out fucking. He couldn't shut his mouth about his political side. They kind of opened a lot of doors and a lot of eyeballs to go, wait a second. So we figured you were this complete liberal, but you never said it. Now you can't.
Really, yeah, he really exposed a lot of the dwellers, if you will. Brought him into the light.
Totally. They couldn't shut the fuck up. They just couldn't. And now we know. I think one of the things I find the funniest about him is, whether you like him or you love him, it doesn't matter to me. It's funny to look at the change in people. Like I remember when he would say Pocahontas or Little Rubio or the things that they would find so offensive. Mm-hmm. And then they would say, I remember like you'd hear on The View, oh, I just can't believe the things he says. And then they were saying it. So he like kind of gave them like a fucking here, if he's saying it, I'm saying it. And then you kind of get to see the real side of a lot of these people, like how fucking hateful they are. Mm-hmm. They're just as fucking hateful. They just covered it up better. Trump's not very good at covering up I wouldn't even say he's hateful. I'd just say he's kind of he just doesn't give a shit. Yeah. And they did, but they still said that shit. I mean, how many times you got to hear how somebody treats their staffers behind the fucking in the green room or behind their fucking closed doors? These aren't good people. They were just as bad, if not worse, and said just as bad, if not worse. What they didn't do is reveal it to us.
They're good actors.
They did. Now they can't fucking stop. They can't stop saying mean shit.
I just don't get. I don't understand how someone hates Trump so much that it just brings them to the point of literally going crazy. You know what I mean? Like, you say Trump's name to some people and they fucking want to just explode on you.
Yeah, it's literally, yeah. I mean, yeah, but back to what I said, I don't blame him for that. Do I think he could have been more suave or sophisticated, as they like to say, presidential? But at that time, I was so sick of presidential candidates myself. We had Obama who got up there, and by the way, no one talks like him. No one talks or addresses people like that. But that's what we wanted was fake. And then no one's ever sat down to dinner and talked like that to another person.
Oh, let me be clear.
What we got was the guy that told you your fucking grass is too long. Maybe you should cut it and get off your fat ass. Like that's the kind of guy we got for president. And they didn't like that. Maybe it was too much. I don't know, dude. Right. But again, you see so many similarities. Like if what we're about to step into a war to keep, looks to me like that's what's happening. Looks to me like we're about to get us in this a pile of shit like COVID, where shit has to shut down again in some form or fashion. Goods are harder to get. And there's no reason that we should even be concerned with this. This isn't.
It's not our fight, man.
Fight. Like they're never our fight, but you can be sure we'll be in it.
It's kind of tough for me. I feel that the Jews have been persecuted since the beginning of time, and I feel for them that way. But at the same time, I mean, It's not really our fight.
No, and whatever your take is on religions, or I think we should all agree. War happens. Uh, we've done some atrocious things around the globe, and so have others. But I don't think we should ever like go along with. Yeah, again, I don't know a whole lot about it, but if you're rooting for babies to be decapitated, and that war is war, but we soldiers fight soldiers, not terrorists. Monsters fight little babies and
Innocence.
people that aren't trained for that kind of combat. I don't think we should ever be, you know, okay with that. It could happen to us. Unfortunately, the people that like it or condoning this kind of behavior are also the people that don't want us having weapons and guns. That's what would stop that from happening.
Right.
If they flew in here on hang gliders. I know just about everybody in my neighborhood's coming out with freaking ARs, so that helps that too. But those people don't want that. I'm just really confused on what's going on. But it's funny because we have a whole different, and that's, like I said, one of the things I want to talk about is the American perspective on it. It just seems to be, at least what the media is showing you, maybe it's not that bad. The interesting thing is like now, it is the college-minded young kids that were the ones doing all the protesting. They were the ones, their schools, and they were the ones that were more, but they were trying to stop the war. They didn't believe in the war. They were hippies. They were, and it was probably a good excuse to party. I can't say I blame them, right?
Sure.
Free love.
Yeah, right. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby.
But yeah, dude, we got to get into the movies. There's so much. Like, we should do an episode where we cover the movie influence and go through some of our favorite movies and that. Break it down. Oliver North had I think he served, right? And so he was pretty into that whole war.
Oliver North?
Not Oliver North.
Oliver Stone.
Not Oliver Stone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the Iran Contra affair. Platoon.
I've met Oliver North, actually.
My dad did too, man. He was a huge. Remember when that was going on? That whole.
Yep.
And people just fucking loved that guy. My dad went out and went to his book signing. He was He was a cool dude, man.
I met him at the Navy Exchange in Norfolk. He was there doing a book signing, and I literally came around the corner from the bathroom and walked right into him. And I said, Colonel North, and most people don't call him Colonel anymore, but it's a Marine thing, man. What's a Marine? Always a Marine. You, regardless of retired, whatever, you stick to the rank and whatnot. And so we talked for a couple seconds. He found out I was a corpsman, and then that was, man, we talked for like another 10 minutes. Which he was like 5 minutes late to his book signing thing because of it. But what a nice guy, man.
Yeah, he just seemed always so cool and collected. That was what made it. That's why people just were fascinated by him. That's another thing we could get into, because he was played a huge part in the Iran Contra affair. So that's a very unique story. We can find out how corrupt the Reagan administration was, because they weren't uncorrupt either. People think when you say that Biden's corrupt, they act like, well, is he? Well, they all were. Even some of our favorites, most likely,
sure.
Especially within the last 100 years. I think that's when it all goes to shit. You go back to Woodrow Wilson, probably one of the worst of all times, and he was kind of doing what they're doing today, and that's using our government, our legal system to affect his political opponents. Wilson was, what did he throw in, 2,500 people in fucking political adversaries in jail during his time. He got us into a fucking war he said he wouldn't get us into. He drafted people he said he wouldn't draft. Remember, he said, I won't use the draft. If I'm president, I won't get us into World War One. He fucking year later has us in World War One, and he's drafting people. So,
well, I don't remember. I know I'm old, but I'm not that old. I wasn't there.
Well, I'm just saying that's when it starts. Yeah. Well, you can read that up. Look that up. There you go. I'll give you a book to read.
Anyway, man. Yeah.
That's about when it starts, and that's where we're at now. You start to get that corruption. You can see it, fucking Delano Roosevelt runs for fucking 8 terms.
You,
What
you
was it?
know,
4 or
you,
5 terms, right? I mean, and he
you're
finally died.
you're right. It's there's always been corruption. It's just more blatant now. It's in your face, and it's fuck you. We don't care. That's the
Yeah, they don't have
problem.
to care, I don't think. I just don't. They're all in the same game together. The problem is I think more than ever, they're just fucking ratting on each other,
Oh yeah.
which is all new. They're just it's so political now that at least they used to kind of like, hey, we're both politicians, right? Keep it quiet. Now they're like, fuck, it gets them votes. It's
Hmm.
crazy, but they've realized, oh, it'll get me a vote this way. I got to go back to the Kennedy thing while we're talking presidents. Um, he does a lot in our country at that time for equal rights. Um, Down in Alabama, the blacks wanted to get onto the college campuses, and Kennedy sends down the National Guard and opens the doors, and that's a big change. Johnson ends up kind of continuing that a little bit, but Kennedy was doing a lot of good stuff. He was young. He had some good ideas, and he really wasn't. At least it seemed like it. I mean, I guess that's your take on whether he wants to get us into that war, or whether he wants to continue that war. Later on, it does come out, and I think this is the stance that most people would take today: is he wants to pull out of that war. And then a lot of people think at that point he's assassinated, and they'll get someone in who maybe would do what he was asked to do, um, or was under the belief of that's what he wanted to do. Because it's interesting to me that he keeps all of his same cabinet, his advisors. He doesn't get his own. It's kind of a touchy situation. You probably wouldn't get your own. You kind of just handed the presidency. You didn't want to be a wartime president,
Hmm.
and that's exactly what you are. My question to you would be, knowing all of this, if it's true, if Kennedy does want to pull us out of that war, like most people think, or would agree, I think he gets killed in '63, uh, and then right afterwards we're headed into that war full force. Do you think that was an assassination for
I
that reason, or maybe
I
there was
think
something else? Maybe he wasn't.
think there's multiple reasons. I think that was a major factor. The fact that he was wanting to disband the CIA um, is a huge.
FBI, yeah. Um, Edgar Hoover and Nick weren't close. They weren't friends.
Nope, not at all. So I think he was definitely assassinated by our country, but I
Maybe
don't
just
think
not
we'll.
for that reason, or
Right.
maybe a myriad of reasons.
Yeah, I think it's a conglomerate of reasons. It just in their minds at the time, and too much of it. It was too much. You could overlook one thing or maybe two, but all the things that he was against and was trying to do that would have ended a lot of people's careers, he had to go.
So you think then that there's a shooter in the bush? What was it, the grassy knoll, or
The grass, yeah. I think looking at all the evidence, there's no way Oswald was the shooter. No fucking
yeah?
way.
Again, it's kind of like our ghost stories, right? It's like I can't explain it, but I'm pretty sure that I seen what I seen. That's kind of like you get the magic bullet.
Hmm.
There's the argument that the gun that he had, they say that it could have pulled off the shots, but it was a bolt action. How would he have done it? Well, he could have practiced enough. He could have done it. I think they've done it. I'm not completely familiar with it, but that magic bullet one's kind of like my radio on the dock, the boat radio that night. I can't explain how that fucking radio comes on, and that magic bullet. I think in the movie, because Oliver Stone is I think he's 100% convinced it was an assassination, and he spent the majority of his life researching it. So I would probably lean that way more than anything. And then if this war, obviously, and if it's like what you say, it's a false flag, but maybe it's not a false flag. Maybe they wanted to go in. The Gulf of Tonkin incident. This is maybe just a way to get us into it. and then it helps if Kennedy's already gone.
Mm-hmm.
He's not wanting to take that war any deeper, maybe. And then after he's gone, that war goes fucking. We're all in at that point. That's when the raids start. So I could see that, but I think there's way too much shit. I think one of the biggest things for me is that we were supposed to get a look at those papers. I always
Yes.
look at things for like what they are. Like, what would it hurt if nothing was wrong? Why wouldn't you show those papers, right? Like,
In other words,
well,
what are you
it's-
hiding? What are you
because
hiding?
you're wrong.
What are you hiding, and why are you hiding it?
But wouldn't you say maybe someone's still alive that's involved in that, and they were just waiting for them to die? Maybe, I don't know.
Potentially, but again, what's the harm?
I think you'd look at it like that. Like, there's no reason, if there's no harm, if nothing was done, then there's no reason those papers aren't released 10 days later.
Right?
Yeah, but we're like, what are we on? Fucking 60 years? What is it?
Yeah.
Still nothing.
Hmm.
Nothing if it's not somewhat suspect. Or as my kids would say, sus.
Yeah. I don't think they'll ever release them.
I think so they could get rid of a lot of the shit, or they could just what do they call that? Redact, you've
Yeah.
probably seen that shit when they just exit out or block it
Yep.
out. But there must be a lot in there
Mhm.
that they're like, well, if we do that, then we have to it's just going to be one bunch of black lines.
I
We're
don't
fucking overlaying
think, as long as there's a Kennedy in politics of that lineage, they won't be released in any
you
form
think
of
even
politics.
RFK, like because he says it too, right? He thinks it was a hit.
Yeah. I
And
think
then
it was a
his
hit.
brother, like, because they know his brother's gonna be what? That's 68. Was Bobby killed in 68?
I forget what year it was.
But I mean, he's gonna be president. I mean, it's almost a sure thing. He's gonna be the president. They were kind of cut from the same cloth. Is he gonna do the same thing? And then wham, he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Ruby. I mean, why the fuck would Ruby want to go shoot? That seems funny. I mean, wouldn't you agree? We're always looking for conspiracy theories in this country. That's one of the things that's so fun is that we could take something that's probably not even there and turn it into something.
Right.
But man, that one, like, why would a fucking owner of a bar, a local fucking choke and puke, want to kill the guy that killed? They got so many ideas on that. Well, he really liked him. Like anybody that much.
Shit, man. They're both. Yeah, things are so much different. You can't get away with that crap anymore, man. Nobody can keep a secret, for one. There's too much social media. Everybody's got a camera that could, and a voice recorder that could catch somebody saying some shit. You know what I mean? It's like damn near impossible to pull off anything like that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with a fucking snub-nosed revolver that probably still had rust on it, like somebody walks right up, shoots him in the stomach. That's one of the topics that I wrote it down the other day because I thought talking about this makes me think about it a lot more. But assassinations, we used to see those fuckers all the time, right? Like we see, we don't see it, but Lincoln's killed. I mean, it was a pretty common thing, right? Franz Ferdinand's killed. That's pretty much kicks off World War I. We got some pretty powerful people killed. We get on into it. Kennedy gets killed.
Reagan was attempted.
John Lennon, point blank in the street, right? Like there was a lot of fucking political famous
The Pope.
people. The Pope, right? Yeah. Bobby Kennedy. I know that, and that's one of the things I thought we could bring up in our topic. But what changed? Is it that you don't have people as passionate, or do you not have people as fucking crazy? or sold on ideas because are we just too wishy-washy now to really be in all in or nothing? Um, and I know that security, Martin Luther King's killed. That's a fucking. A lot of those were horrific assassinations too.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, yeah, just fucking horrific. Um, just a lot, man. Like what happened, and they've done. If it's security, man, nice work because you've done a great job.
Personal personal security detail has come a long way.
Hmm.
There's, you learn from everything, right? Unfortunately, sometimes you learn the most from the worst.
Yeah, anything but war.
But yeah, we should probably wrap it up for this episode. You think?
Yeah, for sure, dude. Because we can get back into it. Like you said, we can do something a little off for next week. Get back to maybe some jokey, funner. Because we find it interesting, but I think most people that grew up when we did understand that it was big time. It was a big part of our movie. So much of our influence came from those people. It's a pretty big war, and it
Pretty
seems
heavy
like
shit.
because it just seems like we're in wars all the fucking time now. That it's this not it's we're desensitized almost.
Hmm.
But yeah, definitely we could come back and like you said, maybe go a couple weeks and come back, get more into like the American side of what we were doing, how we felt about it. I think tonight we kind of covered the political side, kind of how it gets started. Um,
Which is very, very important because that's exactly how they all get started.
right, and
Politics.
it is, I think it's also before we go, we were talking about the biggest fear really was that the spread of communism was going to reach a high. Uh,
Right.
and the opposite happens. We had the worst outlook on that. So much so that we end up getting into a major war that lasts 20 years. But we're so afraid of that we just react. And in the end, it all falls apart. Uh, Communism starts to fall in Russia. The wall comes down. They still wanted to keep it alive. But now that the walls, everything just breaks, and we never thought we'd see that. So not only did it not spread, it stopped. You know, um, like Romania falls shortly after that. China kind of reinvents the wheel a little bit. That's where we're at with that. I'm not
Hmm.
an expert on China by any means, but we thought it was going to be the worst. And maybe we were earlier in the show talking about how it's not going to get any better. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe this is kind of situation where it just seems like it won't get better. We make the worst out of it. We have a terrible outlook on where we're going, and maybe it fixes itself. We sure as fuck didn't think coming from Lenin through Stalin through what the fuck was the other one? Khrushchev.
Brezhnev.
Yeah, yeah. And then Gorbachev would be the one that would help to end it. You know, Looks like we're getting back to where was that was the full intention was to get it back to that USSR kind of thing, but I don't know if that's going to work. But there was a time when nobody ever thought that Russia would fall. The communist ways of Russia would ever fall, and they did.
Right.
So maybe there is hope. I don't know.
Well, it's just proof positive it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Communism
it works for the
doesn't work.
power. It works for the power. It's funny that they want to do it here. People are like, well, socialism. Socialism. There's never been anybody that wants to look it up and find an example. There's never been ever an act of socialism that doesn't turn communism.
Nope. And everyone that I've known that has left a socialist country has never had anything positive to say about it. In fact, I think them leaving says everything.
Dude, I was down in Miami a couple years ago, and I would sit and I'd go to the local bar down there. Most people there, it's funny because they're from Cuba, literally. I mean, there's not a lot of English, but I would go to the bars and talk to there would be professors that would teach on a campus. They'd be in there, and they were from Cuba, and they were like, "Fuck that socialist shit. We live there. We're not going back there." and they were adamant, but they knew a lot more than I knew about it because they'd lived it.
Right.
And to hear them in the way that they talked, they came here to get away from that. They didn't come here to be more in it. So, anybody that thinks that's a good idea should probably talk to a Cuban and get their take on it.
But they won't.
Nope, they won't.
And with that being
one of the
said,
guys, the professor would tell me the students, he'd get in arguments with the students that would tell him how great of an idea it was because I'm fucking yelling at him all the time. Like, I lived it.
yeah, right.
I fucking lived in it. Don't tell me. But yeah.
It's straight indoctrination right there.
Yep, for sure. But anyhow, yeah, we can end it there. We can come back or we can do something else next week. I got some more ideas. We can maybe be a little bit more prepared. I wanted to do some more notes, but I just kind of...
No big deal. Either way, we'll be back next week. Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, all two of you, and see you next week.
Yeah.